Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon McKean of NCDS, and I'm here to welcome you to the NCDS DataBytes Lunchtime Webinar Series. Today's speaker, Monica Horvath, is the Health Analytics Lead for Thotwave. At Thotwave, Monica provides thought leadership for care organizations interested in elevating their data and analytics literacy enterprise-wide. She helps organizations understand their analytics adoption maturity and develop strategies and tactics to achieve the learning health system paradigm. Monica holds a PhD in molecular biophysics on the computational biology track from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center and a BS in chemistry from the University of Pittsburgh. She held a postdoctoral position at the National Institute of Environmental Health and Sciences and has also led a multidisciplinary health intelligence team at Duke Medicine, using analytics to evaluate health information technology approaches and their impact on financial endpoints, care design, and patient outcomes. Today's talk, which is titled Tactics to Grow Analytic Thinking That Every Health Organization Can Use, will last about 30 to 40 minutes with time for Q&A at the end. Please type general questions in the chat box. We will hold them until the end. We're very pleased to have Monica here today. Thank you, and welcome, Monica.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me. I'm a big fan of RENCI, and I'm just really thrilled to be part of this webinar series to share a little bit about the work that I do. So let's go ahead and get started. I just want to say just a few words again about Thotwave, since you probably, if you're in an area, haven't heard of us before. But we are based in the Triangle, and we're a boutique healthcare analytics consultant group. What makes us a little different is that we're not just on-the-ground consultants. We're actually educators as well. I'm currently adjunct faculty at Duke School of Nursing. I teach analytics there. So does my colleague Greg Nelson. We also have others on our team that are still teaching in adjunct capacities in various places around the country. So we take this attitude of that we try to develop analytics education and as well as get kind of the straight dope of what's going on in the ground with healthcare organizations, and that adds a lot of dimension to our company. So with that in mind, here's our roadmap for today's discussion. First, I'm going to give you my view on healthcare's problem with data, and that is in a nutshell that it isn't being used or properly leveraged. I do believe that data literacy is a problem at the core. It's a lack of understanding, fear, or unwillingness to really embrace a data and analytics strategy. Secondly, I'm going to talk about a potential solution, which is creating data champions, something I am extremely passionate about in both my consulting and educational work. And then finally, we're going to finish up with a discussion of just what one possible solution to that. So let's go ahead and get started. So I am a strong believer that past is prologue. I'm an analyst at heart, and I love history. And so to give you some context, this is the path for healthcare data where we are coming from. We started in the 70s with this transition from paper to siloed in-office kind of electronic health record systems. And then slowly, as that was seeing success, financial efficiency with increasing big fee-for-service payment methods became really important for healthcare data warehouses to grow. And those kind of popped up more throughout the 90s. Now, the early 2000s saw the rise in clinical decision support. That's the need to give advice and data to doctors and providers, nurses, everyone, while they are working electronic health record. And this came about due to a number of chilling reports from the Institute of Medicine regarding safety and quality lapses that are either hurting people or even killing them during care delivery. And so now this is our path. We've entered this realm where how we pay for healthcare is changing. How it's currently paid for, as it's in the news all the time, it's just not sustainable. And so we're entering where we're going to try to go away from paying in a fee-for-service manner and go to a value-based world where payment starts to be tied to outcomes, whether how well we stay and how well an outcome worked. So in this context, at the end of the day, survival does indeed depend upon competing well with data. Health systems, hospitals, medical groups, all of these folks need to have good margins to stay in business. And historically, again, they have done this by focusing on service volume, market share, and optimizing payer contracts. But as value-based reimbursement, this focus on outcomes moves forward, the number of health systems in the country is predicted to shrink by about half, and so in the next 5 years or so. So whereas there's around 400 of different organizations now, that's 200 for the future. So to prove value, you need data, and every health system is looking at themselves and asking, are we going to survive as we are now? And so you do need data, and healthcare certainly has a lot of data. And in fact, the average hospital has around 665 terabytes of data floating around that they're generating or actively using. And it is how the executive leadership responds to that that determines whether they're going to be that dinosaur or whether they're going to stick around. And so to be successful, you need to aim on proactive things on the left and not get stuck in reactive efforts on the right. And so proactive things are all about catching harm in real time, inefficiencies, understanding your costs such that it is no mystery at all, what healthcare costs, and using all of that data to negotiate the best contracts with payers. The losers, so to speak, typically more reactive. They're still arguing the merits of data. They're going to miss reimbursement opportunities, probably get out negotiated, and in my opinion, won't be around much longer. So it's, I think I'm making the case that data is absolutely critical, and you all being data lovers on the phone, I'm sure you would agree with that. But it's also very hard to leverage, and I think every industry says that, but it's extra super duper hard in healthcare. And that is because it requires linked strategies that are mindful of the realities of culture, people, process, and of course technology. And whereas other industries might be trying to sell something or provide, I don't know, a telecom service, when we talk about healthcare, it is people's lives on the line. So that adds a whole emotional perspective with regard to what you do with the data. And so some of the things people have done that don't really work in the past is just to take a quick approach of, well, if we put all of our data in one monstrous warehouse, it'll attain a critical mass and become self-aware and do something. Well, just compiling data in a pile doesn't do anything, as I'm sure you all know. You have to do more than that. And also, it's tempting for executives just to try to buy some analytics platform black box that you plug in and think that's going to get them there, and that doesn't really work either. And these approaches are why the ability to turn data into actionable insight has been elusive for healthcare. Many health system executives note that they struggle with showing the ROI of analytics, and a lot of times the predictive and prescriptive projects might be started, but they don't align to business goals, and so it just all kind of falls apart. And so that analytics loop doesn't get closed, and we need to change all that. So we do have consensus out there, right, that big data is important, and developing people that have data and analytics literacy is a growing concern. There are non-ending numbers of boot camp opportunities and fellowships and mini courses and certifications and all sorts of stuff in order to try to make more data-savvy folks for all industries. But how is this being approached in healthcare? So I'm going to get to that next, but three things I want you to keep in mind as I talk through some of these cases is that ask yourself these questions to frame your thinking. How do we have a strategy for getting everybody analytically savvy that then reduces the amount of time overall that it takes to develop a proficient healthcare data analyst? How do we align the needs of a healthcare organization, the capabilities, with what we want those individuals to do, their competencies? And finally, how can we view learning and development as a continuous growth pattern and not just a series of individual events, and really reward and embrace those people who view learning is a lifelong thing they're always doing and not just a one-off, get a job and then you're done learning. So next, I'm going to talk a bit about how healthcare has been trying to address that, and we call this solution the we call it data champions, and that's developing people who are able to use data to drive insights across the enterprise. And so let me describe a case of actually where this works well. For example, you are, I am sure, aware of the Hurley Medical Center in Flint, Michigan. They have used analytics and have found out, of course, that the city of Flint has come under fire for having high lead levels in the drinking water. And what you may not know is Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha discovered the Flint water lead issues thanks to using electronic health record data and some of the standard cohort discovery tools built into her software. And she was poking around in very much an operational capacity, not doing research. But while she was servicing, she's a pediatrician, servicing her patients, she noticed what seemed to be a trend in high lead blood levels in children coming into her practice. And so using just these tools available in electronic health records, she was able to notice that the 2015 blood test results for Flint children under 5 were much higher than for the same age group and period of time in 2013. And so this made her kind of reach out and poke around further, ask for some additional help in pulling the data. And then she showed that actually the percentage of those children with elevated blood lead levels increased from 2.4% in 2013 to 4.9% in 2015. And in the worst areas of the city, the unsafe blood level percentage of children rose from 4% to 10.6%. And so now, this has caused a firestorm of activity to try to resolve this. And based on this insight and what is now being learned, Hurley is actually putting a lead alert in all of the Flint children's medical records so doctors can counsel families and watch for symptoms, because the effects of the lead may not hit you immediately, and it's going to take some time. So this is a great story I always like to share about the power of data to uncover unrealized patient harm. The key to success here is that we had a curious individual that had support in 3 ways to make the discovery possible. First, Dr. Hanna had the right mindset to ask questions of data when concerned about her patient's health. She also had the right skill set and confidence with the tools to explore the data and engage other analysts along her journey. And then finally, the organization had provided the right tool set, tools that a frontline pediatrician through the training knew how to use, and she did use them. So this organizationally supported technology was not enough on its own. As great as it is to have these tools, without her fearlessness with data and her innate curiosity, Dr. Hanna may not have noticed these things, and the crisis could have gone on much longer. So we always ask executives in the C-suite, what are they doing to make their people act more like the doctor in this case? And how are they planning on engaging and nurturing staff that can develop good data detective skills? So while other industries use the term citizen data scientist, that phrase has become under fire to an extent. It's kind of a loaded phrase, and we tend to prefer the term data champion, because you can't make a data scientist, a programmatic data scientist, through just a little bit of training. That's a whole long career path, but you certainly can imbue data and analytics literacy in your workforce at large. And so we consider the healthcare data champion as those individuals comfortable with designing questions, conducting basic exploration, and taking promising hypotheses forward to work with vendors, statisticians, or data scientists, anyone, but to really help move the development and usage of those analytic insights. And so really this gets to one of the potential solutions for helping organizations survive and thrive when they need to compete on data. It is making analytics part of the organizational DNA. So the success secret I have highlighted here is that getting started with analytics in healthcare means that you have the training and well, you're starting to make the staff ready to receive training and you know, go through that change of becoming more data savvy. And this actually should include all of your healthcare workers, leadership and knowledge workers, but of course you have to approach that in a phased manner. But individuals that should receive this training would not currently be formally trained in the data arts, but have curiosity around their environment, participate enthusiastically in data-rich activities. And so you can really look for those people around you that are enamored with the concept of the quantified self and their Fitbit and social media data, and let's give them some opportunities to learn how to explore with data. And just around here is just some, you know, quotes I like from some leaders at different organizations who have enacted these kind of programs and, you know, reflecting on the success and the importance of them. And just to convince you that this is possible, let's just look at some other industries. Sears, in particular, has embraced this data champion, citizen data scientist concept. They have trained over 300 individuals from different parts of their corporate business to use self-service tools to generate reports and explorable extracts to answer 80% of their business questions. Now, this guy, Mark Pickett from Sears, he is part of the leadership team that makes that happen, notes that having so many different products from clothing to lawn and garden that his analytics team will never understand the business context as well as those folks in the business units do. And that sounds a lot like healthcare to me. Healthcare has everything from imaging to every single, you know, specialty relevant to your body and body systems, but there's too much domain knowledge and variety for the analysts to understand it all on their own. So I just wanted to highlight this case and then note that there are, of course, many other organizations doing this as well, kind of elevating their staff internally to become data champions. So now we reach part 3, and I want to talk a bit about our work then in helping to enact this solution to create these health data champions. So one way is to, of course, get started at the source. Let's change our biomedical curriculum to embrace data as a first principle. And a number of medical schools are doing this. Some of the most reported on is the New York University School of Medicine. And their future doctors are not being trained to be data scientists, but physicians that know how to explore data sets, do basic analysis routines, and interpret some of the results from statisticians. So the goal of their Health by Numbers curriculum is to understand patterns of healthcare practice and outcomes by becoming familiar with healthcare databases, develop systems thinking for improved management of individual patients and patient populations, and also get some real-life hands-on experience in understanding the strengths and pitfalls of big clinical data. So they actually have to do projects in you know, with some of these databases. New York State has a big database that of all of the medical claims data, and they actually work at inpatient discharges, and they actually work through exploring this. And from my perspective, you know, I do teach at the Duke School of Nursing, and I teach for those getting their master's degree in nursing, and they have two analytics courses they have to take. And so you see, you know, trying to get analytics into the graduate and college curriculums already happening. But what if, you know, you already for all the other existing staff already there, how do we develop them to grow data and analytics literacy, as we obviously aren't just going to replace everybody? And, you know, the key word is training. There's a lot of problems with training. And even if you hire data analysts, you still have to train them on the healthcare knowledge. And even if you use analytic vendors, you still have to ensure the people receiving the insights from the vendors back on your provider side know how to interpret that data. And if you don't have a good plan for this, you're just not going to get the insights. You're not going to be able to close that loop. And, you know, some of these, I think, many of you would identify with. Either they've been told to you or you have felt this through your training experiences. It's kind of point in time. You don't know if it took or not, don't know if it was worth it, and it may not feel aligned to what the organization really needs. It can be great to send someone off to some, fancier predictive analytics training, but if organizations aren't even at a point where they can do reporting well, clearly that person isn't going to be able to apply their skills immediately. So this training approach is really about a shift from tool set to mindset. Often when you talk about training and analytics, people say, oh, what tool are you going to do? Are you going to do SAS? You're going to do something else? All sorts of different tools. And this is the wrong question, in my opinion. While tools are critical, they change over time. We need to start thinking about how to teach people to be agile with tools, to use the right tool in the right situation, as develop a variety of the other kind of scaffolding competencies needed to really make analytics go. And so these include competencies in all of these areas, storytelling, design thinking, innovation, product management, these, quality, knowledge management. These are all things that are needed in addition to what people would consider to be kind of the meat and potatoes of statistics and data science. So our solution that we promote in doing this is all about competency-based learning system for health analytics. And this isn't another buzz phrase or a mandate to go take a course. This is a very intentional exercise where an organization maps the current competencies of an individual against a gold standard, and that is, for us, a health analytics competency model. It's tailored for healthcare needs. And then the organization does the standard consultative task you do when you look at the gaps. Those gaps are important. They tell you in aggregate what the gaps are for the organization as well as the needs for that individual. So you can think about how to divide up your training dollars in that way. And you develop this, personal learning plan that also aligns to what the organizational training needs are. And so, I think in doing this personal learning plan, it is important to have both formal and informal learning actions so that as you're trying to train people, they're getting a little bit of training in different ways every day. And I'll show some examples of that coming up. But the advantage of the competency-based model that I'd like you to take away is that while skills are important of any job profile, this model recognizes that they're not robust or nuanced enough to fully guide talent management or activities for your organization. To manage the talent life cycle, you need a system that's consistent, structured, progressive, and unifying. And you need well-defined, multi-level competencies that are designed to provide a strong but flexible foundation that links to kind of the job families and job levels you have in your organization that are analytical facing. And so again, the advantages is, gives you that consistency of knowledge, skills, and abilities, a framework for job alignment. It defines a way for you to progress and get better at analytics once you know all of the competencies and then the different levels, the different bars you need to reach. And it also supports coordination so that everyone's looking at the same series of roadmaps for how they're developing their learning plan. There's coordination, consistency among where people are trying to go. So to define these competencies for healthcare, what we did then was actually take a step back and look at the workflow of analytics that we are immersed in all the time as consultants. And here is what our perspective of that analytics project lifecycle looks like. And for us, that means that you start with from defining a novel question or business problem you want to address, and then going all the way into the operationalization phase. That means in some capacity, this is insight placed into the hands of the business that they do something with. So these are, we call this our humps diagram, but these are the different phases along the way. and the height of the curve for each of these is kind of the intensity, roughly abstract intensity of the activity, and the overlap of these phases is very intentional. When you're in your define phase, just trying to come up and you're working with the business analyst and you're trying to just come up with the, define that question you want to answer that addresses your business problem, you know, you might need to extract some data and play with it and explore, and then maybe you're like, oh, that's not a good route, and then you hop back into design. So there's kind of this 2 steps forward, 1 step back, lots of little mini loops that occur in going through this life cycle. But the whole goal of doing that, if you do each of these steps well with the appropriate due diligence, and we've done all of this workflow process mapping about what these steps are, that means when you finally get down here into the present and operationalization phase, you shouldn't come to a place where you had like a project ending confounder issue that takes you all the way back to here. And so that's, you know, whenever you have too many times that you get almost here and then you go back to square one, that erodes trust in what analytics do. And in healthcare, that trust is very fragile to begin with. There's not a whole lot of trust there just yet, because sometimes there is a perspective, particularly when you're looking about clinical insights, doctors are thinking, or providers, you know, why are you telling me what to do with my patients? And we need to change that message into, well, no, we're giving you information to help you make better decisions. So in light of our broad experience in teaching analytics as well as working consultatively with healthcare clients, we have created a model, the Thotwave Healthcare Analytics Competency Model, that builds upon other models that have been out there, but it is tailored to the healthcare data and analytic product lifecycle. And so it has 9 equally important knowledge domains as listed here. And I would emphasize that you know, when you think of the traditional data scientist, which is, some mixture of programmatic, data programming, data engineering, and statistics and architecture, that's just, that's peppered throughout here, but it's just one part of the picture. There are a bevy of extremely important soft skills, project management capabilities that are essential for people to have to make analytics go, and that's what's going to be represented more fully in all of the 9 domains. Page down. Okay. So, of all of these domains, clearly you're not going to be have one person that can be good in all of these roles. You need a variety of roles to have a good analytics machine that feeds in useful insights to the business. And so through our work as educators and consultants, we have seen again and again there's roughly about 5 different core job families in healthcare, and we characterize them as follows. And what this is showing is radar charts that give the expected average idealized competency level for all of the positions within each of these 5 job families for the 9 knowledge domains. And it's a simple Likert scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest level master you can have. You're an expert who mentors. 1 being a novice, little to no knowledge in that area. But very briefly, just to go through some of our families, and again, this is the ideal state, average ideal state for all the roles in each of these families. The business analysts are those that we see as people who liaise very well with frontline workflows and helps out with defining business requirements, and are really, have their ears to the ground to what's going on with workflow so that they help the requirements be correct and that the question design be the best possible. And of course, they do this iteratively with some of the analysts, but they're going to really excel in the health domain knowledge area and also be aware on the strategic front where a project, fits within the overall organizational goals. Statisticians, obviously, there's many different kinds, but it sits in the statistical analysis family. And we find that the data scientist, depending on what kind of data scientist you are, either kind of falls in between these two groups of technical data analysis or statistical analysis job families. So the big data engineers, more the architects, very programmatic in nature, often kind of fall more in this realm, and more the biostatisticians that maybe don't have as much for the programming background often would align more closely to this family. So for the other two job families, in terms of the cat herders, so to speak, we have the leadership and project management families, and project and product management. I do mean that it's really about managing both. These are those people who really ensure that the whole analytic life cycle is, goes and is taken home. And the project manager, product managers are more tactical in nature. Obviously, leadership is a little more aligned to strategy. But if you could look at all of these radar diagrams, you can really see kind of the overlap between capabilities of these different families. And so in this model, we have these 9 domains of knowledge. There's 43 competencies that map to these different 9 domains. Now, each competency has several objectives, skills, knowledge, abilities that means you are competent. And so all of those are scored for 19 total different roles across these 5 job families. So if you're doing your math here, you can see we actually have, a lot of quantitative data around what it means to be competent for all these different roles and job families down to a very granular level, and it all rolls up. And so as you can see, you could see then why we use this both to guide when we consult with healthcare organizations, as well as a roadmap when designing curriculum for a particular audience. So the great thing about having put all your work into this very quantitative competency model that allows you to mathematically articulate the best paths for career progression in health analytics based on these competencies. So in the modern world, we feel the career ladder is a very outdated concept. Agile organizations promote and reward around your movement in a lattice, which recognizes the value in someone taking on skills that would be considered lateral in nature traditionally. And so what we have here, we have, these are listing some of the different roles, and we have the different job families on top, and just kind of a flavor of seniority as you would go up what would be a traditional job ladder for each family pillar here. But with the competency model, you can look at the distance between the competency scores, then to say what are the possible both lateral and promotional paths for individuals between these different kind of roles. And these roles can have many different job titles in it. These are just kind of abstracted for the sake of a diagram like this. But what I do want to point out to you is that this kind of presentation makes it crystal clear how people can move around in analytics, which is really great for retention and career planning. And it also gives you a view into, how some of the, leaders and how people get to kind of the highest levels in the analytics organization. So we are currently using this model right now for several healthcare organizations, some very large ones that need to redesign their whole approach to their staff. They have analysts all over the place in silos. Everybody has a different job title. They all mean different things. We're trying to help them align all of that, as well as develop kind of the ongoing curriculum that helps everybody progress in their career. So our model gave the ideal competencies levels, but when we go into an organization and we're trying to apply the model, of course we need to know where those people in the organization now, where they are. So we do have the skills assessment process that I should note that the CEO of our company is a social psychologist and used to be the IT director at Gallup. So, we love survey analysis. We think we do it fairly well. And so we have this skills assessment process that goes through all of the different competencies. It takes about an hour for the individual to fill out. And it really says kind of where it helps us get all of that data of where they are based on their role. And also what we collect as we go through that with them, it's not just about where they are, how they would rate themselves and how their peers would rate them, but also just what their interest level is in some of these different competencies. That's really valuable for the organization to know as well. If someone's just not at all interested in learning something, you don't want to force that on them. Maybe something's not the right fit. So they go through this competency assessment, and it could be 20 people in an organization doing it. It could be hundreds. We've had both, but this all gives us an incredibly rich amount of data. And then so what we then give the organization, to help them guide on the next steps, is they get both the summarized organizational view of kind of where their whole group is, as well as we get individual talent development profiles. And so that also just kind of recapitulates someone's interests. It shows the gap in competency for their current role versus where they are expected to be. And so this gap, again, is between how they rate themselves and how a peer or manager group does the rating. And it creates these numbers that then give some insight on where people need to get further training and development. And of course the names are blacked out as to protect people, but this is an example of one such report. And we can see here, in red, this is where someone should be. Blue is where they are, and you can see where they're on. It's roughly the same shape. They're on the right path. This person in particular needs to bone up on data exploration. Or doing fairly well in the other areas. So this is, organizations really like this tool. They find it really helpful because it's not punitive in nature. It's really just meant to help, people get the most out of their time in learning and development. And we do this kind of comparative analysis on this gap. We calculate actually a variety of gaps, and we do it in a number of different ways. So, but at the end of the day, what the whole point is then is whenever you have all of those gaps worked out, you understand this, then helps you align. Maybe someone's not even in the right job role. They need to be retitled to something else. And so all of this, we provide kind of template job descriptions that they can start with, then to recategorize people, and it's all aligned to the competency model. And as you can see, then the intent is to really showcase this role in analytics where a person is really kind of a walking Venn diagram that has a different level of competency in different areas, but all of those competency areas and high-level domains are explicitly identified. So finally, and I'm about to wrap up, but what you do then with this data is for organizations then to get better is that you align this to a talent development strategy. So at a very high level, we know from the gaps, gap is the stuff in gray, what with the organization, and then this drills down to the individual as well, what they have and what they don't have. And then this then allows you to tailor the type of learning opportunities, and that might be formal curriculum, it might be very informal, but then that helps that person along the way. And we have instructional designers on staff. We spend a lot of time in helping with the alignment of curriculum. And one thing, this learning and development activities, often just referred to as training, I do want to emphasize that it isn't just courseware. It's really a journey. Most of the time, people think of training as just these blue steps in the middle. Go to instructor-led training, practicum projects, e-learning, hands-on workshops. But it's also important to have done, one, all of this front work so you know what competencies are you aiming for, tell people what you're doing and what's the point of these, skills assessments, so you know where people should be trained, and you do the training. And then it's absolutely critical to ensure that it's not one and done. There are micro-learning and other small learning opportunities over time, always curated for someone to keep acting on and applying what they have learned. And we help with the development of those plans, but it's all based on that and guided by that competency model. So just to end on a use case about, well, who does this well? It sounds like healthcare doesn't have any money to begin with, and how are they even doing this? Well, here's one great example. UPMC Health System has always been a leader in much anything in health analytics, and certainly in the data and analytics literacy as well. What they've done is that they have partnered with Carnegie Mellon University. They've used data competency analysis, and they have actually created a data analytics certificate program only for their internal health system employees. And they started that in 2013, and it was meant to take courses from the Masters of Science in Information Technology program at CMU, analytics courses, tailor them somewhat for healthcare, and then have these courses be something they work through on a 6-hour-a-week basis with some homework, but it's very aligned to what they're doing day to day. And what is, they started with the finance department, getting the finance people, and some of the business owners in finance more into data analytics, and they've been slowly kind of moving this out into different avenues of the organization. So it's a really innovative program, and I also see that payers as well, a lot of the Blues are starting to do things like this as well, with using the competency-based education as their rallying cry, as their point. So in summary, how to grow analytic thinking. I mentioned that at first you have to know your analytic strategy, who you want to be, where you're trying to go in this very chaotic environment where healthcare is scrambling to make the best use of data, especially when they haven't been making great use of it in the past. You have to align your analytic strategy and figure out where you want to go, and then use a competency model to make a roadmap forward for training. So it's not just a, send people off to courses and just hope for the best kind of activity. Once you have that competency model and the roadmaps, then you can place everyone into their start position of where they are, and then give them the training learning path forward. And sometimes when we advise people, it's here's this menu of things between Coursera and this other workshop, and maybe there's a free opportunity, or look at this webinar. We give them, it's not that we're even selling them our training, it's here's this free stuff out there you should be using. But that kind of activity needs to be tailored, and it should all roll to your competency model and your goals for the organization, which again aligns organizational capabilities to, or I should say individual capabilities to organizational competencies, and that is our goal. So I think I am right about on time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
This is Shannon. Thank you, Monica, for your time and your content. That was certainly very interesting. While people are typing in their questions, I wanted to remind those listening that we are recording, and you'll get an email next week with a link to this recording, so you can replay particular parts that were of interest to you. We do have a couple questions. Okay, this is a statement from one of the participants. He wanted to add an interesting factoid for the talk. The fastest growing data specialist role in 2016 was not data scientist, it was a clinical data analyst. Lazy analytics will show data scientist as leading, but it's a very abused title. Analyzing the active skills required for data scientists in a year-over-year growth rate of 40%, clinical data 54%. IBM will be publishing a report soon. Is that consistent with what you found, Monica, in your work?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, it's not the data scientists as, if you just think of that as more the heavy statistical and programmatic kind of personalities, and it is very much an abused title. It is really the people that, I see them as active data exploration liaisons between the business and, what might be more technical or deeply statistical roles later. I mean, these people should be able to do a simple model, do some analysis, but they're not going to dive in and set off some big machine learning methodology. And so we see that that type of person is exactly what healthcare organizations are looking to hire, and they're very hard to find. And that's why we also, think that, well, who do you have internally that maybe you can train and get up to speed, especially if they already know your business data? Because that is, as someone who has trained when I ran analytics team at Duke, training people with no knowledge in healthcare, especially even if you're good at analytics and coming from another industry, can be very challenging. And sometimes it's just too much. It's too different, and they move on to something else.
That brings up
so thank you for that note too. Yeah.
That brings up a great question about hiring versus training. As you think about the competencies that you look at, are there those that are better to hire for, or versus those that are better to train for?
Yeah. So I really think that so you want, in my opinion, you want to hire for the curiosity, innovation, and the ability to ask really good questions, and a lack of fear around exploring data and generating some initial insights. And honestly, to do some of that, you don't even need any statistics to get started. It's just about critical thinking. And I have found in my experience, in both with my own teams and then working with organizations, that no matter what, those are the people you want to hire and hire first, and especially if they know the business. Where I would outsource more as a commodity, and we do see this as well, a lot of analytics as a service companies popping up, where they just take this huge swath of data dumped from your electronic health record, and they work on the predictive models for you. And that's worked really well for some organizations who can't stand up a data science team.
Talking about the data in electronic medical records, one of the things that I've observed is that for the uninitiated, people think you start with the data and then the analytics happen. But in my experience, buying the data, third-party data sources, that's a messy, complicated business. How do you capture that sort of skill set in your model?
So you cut out for a little bit. How do you capture which kind of skill set again? Sorry.
Thinking about alternative data sources. In my experience, sometimes the uninitiated will think that it starts with the data is all there, and all you need is to start analyzing it. But there could be other sources of data that may not be initially part of the electronic health records. Fitbit data comes to mind, for example, that can be compiled. Is that something that your clients look at?
Yes. So that all speaks. So there's two parts to that. So there's one, having a very intentional data strategy and roadmap that says what kinds of external data you're looking for, because there is a lot of external data brokers, stuff to be bought. But you're right, just getting that and then throwing it in the pile isn't going to necessarily get you anywhere. So you have to have a strategy to know what you're buying and why. What could there be a business use for? And then, so that's in our strategic alignment domain, and there's some competencies and objectives that fit that. And then on the, okay, now that you have it, what do you do with it? How do you mine it? How do you store it? How do you make it accessible to people, but not spend 3 million years modeling it, which is probably unmodelable to begin with? That then falls into some of the competencies within the technical analysis domain. So we definitely address that from both the identify, do you know the purpose for getting that external data, and then do you know how to implement an architecture for it? So that's in there. Thank you for your question.
Okay, I think that's the end of our questions. Monica, I really want to thank you for this talk today. We certainly appreciate your time and that of all the attendees. For those of you in the audience, remember that DataBytes is a monthly lunchtime webinar series. Our next session is Wednesday, April 5th at noon, and will feature Ann Drobnis of the Computing Community Consortium. We look forward to seeing you there then. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.